Welcome back to the big issue discussing the media budget review. I've been chatting with the Honourable Member of Parliament for Cape Coast South, George Hagen from the NDC. He feels that there were significant loopholes in the media budget review that was read. Balance of payment issues were not addressed, debt restructuring not addressed. He's also accused the government of fudging numbers with regards to the country's proper economic position. We also heard from Dr. Stephen Amwa, Member of Parliament for Nshayaso, who also has a different, he's calling for unity in solving all these problems that the government is facing. You can also send your thoughts to 0549986996, 0550585832, 0549986996, and 0550585832. We're also on Twitter at City973 and at CityTVGH. You use the hashtag The Big Issue. I'll gladly read your comments and suggestions. You can also reach me on at Godfred Akutobuafo at eSportsman. Or you can also catch us on Facebook, streaming at CityTVGH and City 97.3 as well. Let me do some virtual discussions now. Let me talk to Dr. Patrick Assuming, an economist. Dr. Assuming, morning.
Good morning, and good morning to viewers.
I'm sure you were listening with interest to Dr. Stephen Amwa's take on the matter, as well as Honourable Ricky Hagen's analysis of the situation. When you listened to the finance minister and his 2.5-year turnaround time based on the presentation that he did, were you convinced? Did you walk away? Because I know you've held a position on this matter for some time. Has your position changed based on what you heard in the course of the week?
Okay, thank you. Before I even address the question about my position, there's something about what Mr. Rick Hagen was saying that I wanted to just have a small take on that.
Go on, feel free.
So, in terms of the deficit numbers, so I think he was questioning why the size of the deficit has gone up marginally. And at the same time, the real GDP projection has been reduced, and yet the deficit as a percentage of GDP has also been reduced. So he's right that yes, and when you look at, if you compare appendix table 1B of the original 2022 presentation and the mid-year presentation, appendix table 1B, you see that the real GDP projection has come down. But he also knows that when we are doing either debt to GDP or the deficit to the GDP, it's the nominal GDP we use. The nominal GDP projection has been increased. And the reason is that the end-year inflation that was anticipated when the original budget was read was 8%. Now it is over 28%. So it means that even though the real GDP is down, because prices are going to increase more than threefold than was initially anticipated, the nominal GDP has increased. And that is why the deficit to the GDP has come down. I think that is not inconsistent at all. But I think the substantive point is that the reduction is not because of discretionary policy by government to reduce the deficit. There are two things in it. One is that we are getting windfalls from petroleum, and then because prices are going to be high, the denominator has also gone up. And those are the reasons why the end-year deficit to the GDP has come down. So even though it has come down, it's not reason to celebrate at all, because the petroleum windfalls may change depending on if oil prices change today. And then the other thing is that to say that your deficit as a ratio of GDP is down because prices are high, it's a symptom of a problem. It's not a good thing to celebrate. But it is clearly, the fact that the number has come down is absolutely consistent. So I wanted to have my take on that. In terms of what we have heard from the finance minister broadly, well, I didn't really hear anything that makes me feel extremely optimistic that our, long-term future suddenly looks bright.
Well, he gave himself a 2.5-year timeline to turn things around.
Yes, I think that is fine. But what did he tell us will happen in the 2.5 years to make us feel more optimistic?
You didn't hear anything?
Well, because I didn't hear anything different from what I've heard before, which I haven't found extremely convincing to think that, the future is going to be bright. What I've heard mostly are things that will help to fix some aspect of government finances. But even then, you have to question, because, we've seen that the specific measures that the finance minister has put in place to improve the government financing positions haven't really worked. We see that the e-levy that was brought in hasn't really brought as much as we would have expected. Mm-hmm. Now, what was good to hear is that finally, from August, there's going to be some action on the property taxes, which is great. And also that the exemptions bill has finally been passed. It would have been good to hear how much those two major fiscal measures will give us. I didn't see too much discussion of that. I didn't see the finance minister talk a little bit more about that in terms of how that will address our fiscal challenges. Because those are things that many people, myself included, have always argued that we have to take action on. So on that score, it is good that we've seen some action being taken. It would have been great for the finance minister to tell us how bringing in those measures, how much we are going to get going forward, and then how that will help, address our fiscal challenges going forward. But in terms of what we will do to restructure the economy, well, I did hear him say correctly, in my view, that the IMF is only a short-term fix. It is not going to address our long-term problems, and that we need to restructure the economy. He did go on to mention some of the things that they are doing in terms of some of their flagship programs, One District, One Factory, and then other measures. But, we have been doing this for a while now, and we haven't seen the impact that we would have expected after 5 years. So it would have been more reassuring to hear from him why things haven't worked as expected and what are the specific corrective measures that will help us to ensure that things are going to work better going forward. So on the whole, and I think sometimes the finance minister appears to have a cavalier attitude towards things that Ghanaians care about a lot. So, if you hear the way he referred to NAPCO as iconic program, but I think you and I know that on daily basis, we hear people in NAPCO complaining about not being paid. And then when he was discussing the issue about food shortages in secondary schools, he seemed to say it's a problem with distribution and access, and not a fundamental problem of production and financing. So I think, he, in some sense, I'm not sure whether, I cannot say, I'm not going to say that he doesn't care about the problem of Ghanaians, but sometimes his attitude, I know he's a very calm person, and calmness in times of trouble is a virtue. But sometimes it appears that he come across as a little, at least the way he presents the problems that Ghanaian cares about. That's what leads me to say he appears.
He sounds a bit aloof.
Yes.
Interesting. Interesting thoughts from Dr. Patrick Asumi. Dr. Japuma Jekedako, morning.
Good morning to you, and good morning to your viewers and your listeners. Can you hear me, please?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you for making time for us this morning. I'm sure you've heard your colleague, academic from your school as well, University of Ghana Business School, sharing his thoughts on the finance minister. What are your thoughts primarily on what you heard?
To a very large extent, I think I agree with my good friend Patrick on a lot of the issues that he has expressed. The finance minister spoke about so many things. He spoke about the things that we hear every time. So one of the things that I felt was refreshing had to do with the fact that the finance minister said that he wasn't going to be asking for any more money. But I paused a bit, and then I was wondering how we're going to be financing our expenditure, given that the revenue measures that we had taken initially in the 2022 budget that was read in 2021 had not really worked. And like Patrick said, and like everyone knows as well, the e-levy has not brought in as much as we thought it would bring in. And yet we felt that a lot of hope was being put on the e-levy, raking in a lot of revenue for the economy. And so if the revenue measures had not really worked, and the expenditure, if you look on the expenditure side, you would see that some things were the same views that were expressed earlier on this year were also expressed, apart from, I think, the EVAT that was going to be introduced to make sure that people who were not registered on VAT were going to be paying VAT now, and also property rates being finally modified and then brought up for us to pay. Now, this is obviously on the revenue side, the EVAT, and then, but when it comes to the expenditure, really, and you think about the 30% cut on government expenditure, discretionary, let me put it, discretionary expenditure. We heard this a while ago. I was expecting to hear how this has so far impacted on what we are expecting to get in the economy. What have we managed to save out of this 30% cut in discretionary expenditure? There could be other expenditure lines that we could have touched to ensure that we were going to be living within our means. I know that the finance minister spoke about using the gains that we have managed to make as far as petroleum prices are concerned, crude oil prices are concerned, etc., on the world market. And then based on the new revenue measures that are coming up, right, we expect to close that gap and manage to live within our means. But the point is, we have always been speaking about property rates. What are the actual actions that are going to be taken, right, to ensure that people pay their taxes? So in those other countries where they are able to mobilize property taxes, it's not that people want to pay taxes that they are paying the taxes. It's because the enforcement is stronger in those countries. What measures are we putting in place to ensure that these taxes are going to be paid? If you talk about EVAT and the EVAT, for example, again, what measures are being put in place to be able to ensure that this actually works? And those are the questions that we need to be asking, because the fact that we are not coming for money, it's okay. Asking for more money, it's okay. But are we going to be able to close the financing gap based on these measures that you have announced? That's one question that we need to be raising. I also felt that, I also feel that we need to do more with our expenditure side. There are certain programs that we need to sit back and do a proper evaluation on. Programs that we are spending on, some of the flagship programs that we are actually spending on. We need to do a proper evaluation on those programs to see what those programs are actually bringing to us. We could do away with, or for the meantime, as we are struggling, we could halt a number of the flagship programs, or one of the flagship programs. And I keep speaking about the free SHS thing. There are people who can pay. Allow them to pay. Those who cannot pay, you support them with scholarship. That would go a long way, because we know that a lot of resources are being spent on the free SHS program. Let us look at it again and have a good review of the free SHS program. Again, do we need the number of ministers that we have? Because all those things, the number of ministers and the number of agencies that we do have implications for our budget. So the question is, do we need a number of ministers that we have currently? And I heard Dr. Stephen Amwa speak about that. If we can look at it and reduce it, it's going to go a long way to reduce our expenditure that we have. So for me, I expected to see more things coming on the expenditure side, more cuts coming on the expenditure side. And then I expected to hear the finance minister speak to us about the real ways in which he was going to be mobilizing the revenue from the new sources that he had put forward.
Were you surprised by the the proposal to toll the new roads that are being constructed with
I forgot about
private
that.
partnerships?
I forgot about that. I wasn't surprised at all, because in the first place, those tolls should not have been removed. I mean, how do we expect to maintain our roads if users of roads are not paying tolls? And in a country like Ghana, where we are struggling with revenue mobilization, the last thing we had to do was to take away those tolls that we were paying initially. So I am happy. One of the things that makes me happy is that at least we are going back to the toll time. And if we can introduce a tax on, I know that people don't like to hear taxes, but we are also desperate. We need to remember that for us to be developed, we need to be able to get revenue. And one of the major ways in which we can get revenue is to be able to pay taxes. So if we can impose further taxes on motor users, like what they do in the UK, the MOT, and we use that to fix our roads, I think that would also be useful. So I wasn't surprised that it came back, because in the first place, I think all hope was being banked on the e-levy to resolve all our problems. Mm-hmm. But once the e-levy failed, the gap was really seen, and now they have resorted to the tolls. In the first place, the tolls shouldn't have been taken off. No country develops well without, or have its roads and things developing well without tolls. So I wasn't surprised that it came back.
All right, thank you very much for your thoughts on that, Dr. Japuma Jekedaku. And then Dr. Alex Ampabin, he's with Oxfam. He's a fiscal policy specialist. Morning, Dr. Ampabin.
Good morning, Godfred.
Always good to have you on the big issue. Your thoughts, and I also want you to focus on this 22 billion Ghana cedi accusation that the minority leveled against the government, and the explanation from the BOG. A lot of people who have studied the BOG document seem to think that it does answer the questions, although the minority seem to disagree with that particular position.
Thanks again, Godfred. Personally, I haven't laid hands on that appendix of the budget. Neither have I been able to have access to the BOG responses. But I believe that at this critical time, especially with the galloping inflation, any decision to print additional currencies should be well thought through, not to make a very dicey situation even worse. Personally, I think my interest this morning probably will be more on the ways to overturning the challenges we're going in on the revenue side, mm-hmm. which I think some colleagues have raised a very important issue. It is very welcoming to hear that the tax exemptions bill has been passed. I think it's something CCTV and co have done really well in the past on advancing the conversation. And I hope that Finance Minister said we're losing 5.5 billion in 2020 on tax exemptions. But recently, I think he now said we're losing about 2.7 billion. You read the IMF consultation document, the last edition, July last year, also say you're losing 4-5% of our GDP, translating to about 18 billion. So we really don't know what it is that we are losing. But at least having this bill now, if you decide to apply it in totality, being able to report periodically on what exemptions you are giving away and what it is that you are getting in return could potentially help us in answering some of those questions that is lingering. But on the revenue side, I really don't think we did take enough steps on what it is that we want to realize, because Finance Minister talked about the property rate. I remember in the budget, the decision was the new property unified common platform to start in March, in April, March. No, I think it was February rather. But then we are 7 months, getting to the 8th month of the year, and so far nothing is being done. Now we're going back to saying we are going to implement it in August. I hope it does happen, because for a country experiencing these challenges in domestic revenue, it's time to be more aggressive in our pursuit. I think Dr. Jepoma did talk about property, the toll booth coming back. She's happy. Personally, I think I also be supporting her view. In fact, I'm excited to hear it. The decision to cancel the toll booth to me was not justifiable, and we don't have enough revenue streams. But personally, I would suggest that we scrap all toll booths on the road. We scrap all charges relating to toll levies at the pump or when you go to DVL. Let's get rid of every element of base, small charges on road levies, and also scrap the toll booth. In place of it, let's introduce the road tax. The road tax is for every single road user, not only the one that crosses the toll booth. Because me and you can be living in saying, I could be living in Oyarefa, and then you'll be living in, if you're going to,
let's say down
the hill.
Let's say down.
Yeah. So you might be 1 meter behind the toll booth. You'll be subject to pay toll booth. But then I'm just in front of the toll booth. You are plowing the same route, no fault of yours, your house is just a meter behind the toll booth. You will not be asked to pay for toll booth. So to me, there's no fairness in it. If you're really desperate for revenue, scrap every toll booth out there, scrap all the small levies which are related to the road in all, either as the pump or wherever you might find them. Consolidate them into one single payment. Let's call it a road tax for every single road user. How it might work, we might choose to pay it monthly, quarterly, or yearly. So for example, we might have saloon cars paying, say, 200 Ghana a year. V8 and bigger engines, 500 Ghana a year. Articulated trucks, another big ones, paying 1,000 a year. We have over 2 million cars in Ghana. If my math is right, even if it's 10 cedi a month, that is 20 million roughly on my projection of 2 million cars in Ghana. That is the right way to raise revenue. That is the most fairer way of raising revenue. But to cancel toll booth and now trying to bring it through the back door, what is new road? To me, I think the minister got to listen to some of these recommendations. We are desperate need of revenue. It is time for us to sit back, look at what potential do we have. A saloon car owner paying 200 a year in road taxes in order to have his road maintained. If this is properly earmarked, I really don't think that will be an issue. And to me, that money should be properly earmarked. You shouldn't find yourself in the consolidated account where you cannot account for. If it's for roads, earmark the funds, put it to where it's supposed to be, and I'm sure Ghanaians will be paying. In fact, it was interesting to hear Dr. Stephen Amua talking about lack of unity on the e-commerce taxation. I remember when the e-levy came, these are some of the things you were fighting for, that instead of taxing people's pocket money, look for the digital beneficiaries, the real players of the digital sector. The world has moved from brick and mortar to digitized economy. UK introduced the digital service tax, and they're generating substantial revenue. Go to YouTube and try and watch a video and see how many adverts you get from a 5-minute video. Go to your Facebook page, try to scroll down on your page and see how many adverts you're going to get. It is time that NCA definitely have the capacity to be able to bring in a system that will be able to track revenues that are generated within Ghana and what percentage goes to government. There are real opportunities and areas for government to look at. And to me, building consensus is very, very important. And it was very sad to hear Stephen Amoah saying that the delay in this e-commerce taxation was partly because of lack of consensus among the two parties in the House. So to me, Georgia, and I like using this example, undertook the same reform we are doing here in Ghana. And within 5 years, they fully financed their budget. That is the kind of story we need. Why was Georgia able to do it? Georgia gained independence in 91, April, from Russia. A very small nation now fully financing their budget through their own homegrown domestic revenue measures. Then you come to Ghana, you have the NDC and NPP, NDC, because we want power all the time. Our interest over national issues is always relegated. It is time for us to have the conversation that issues around domestic revenue is important. Then you also look at the informal sector. That's a huge sector. We are in a situation where we say the economy is made up of 60, sometimes 70%, depending on which document you read. I think from the Ghana Statistical Service, it's around 70% of economic activities carried on in the informal sector. Last time talking to the former GRA commissioner, that sector contributes 2% of our taxes. So how do you build an economy where 70% of economic activity, where it's generated, is contributing 2% in tax revenue? And the informal sector, I'm not looking for the watches seller or the cocoa seller. I'm looking at the real sector or the real areas which drive the economy. We have the plumbers, I like using them. We have the masons. You have these guys can put up a building for say 30,000, 40,000 Ghana. In a couple of months, you move to another one. You charge 50,000, you move to another one. As it's time, there's no clear way of taxing this. Once these guys finish, then we have the tilers coming in. You have the plumbers coming in. You have all categories of people classified within the informal sector who are now going untaxed because we don't really have a better way of tracking them and taxing their output. So property taxation is also the third one. I think in March, we were told that we have 7.5 million properties in Ghana. 7.5 million properties which are going to be embossed with digital number plates for easy identification. It is time for us to move into that direction when we properly use a system able to track who owns what and what type of taxes are available. In fact, if government really push this property tax, a number of our youth who are coming through the NAPO might be employed here because I don't see the assembly being able to administer the tax on their own. Neither do I see GRA doing a better job. So, and here we are trying to put two taxes in one. That's maybe another question for one day because property rates and property tax are not the same. So trying to put them and call them unified common platform where you're going to have GRA collaborating with the assembly, I really don't know how this is going to play out. And I hope GRA are not going to send a couple of consultants and they later say they are asking for 50% of the revenue coming out. So we can have property tax desk in the various assemblies. We can have a well-trained valuers who will be going around to issue those property information to landlords. Build a solid property database where you'll be able to access landlord data and then administer the property taxes. To me, each assembly is definitely capable of having a property tax desk. How many people can we employ in the desk? How many youth can we employ to do the evaluation? How many guys can we employ to go out and administer the taxes? So it is time for us to look beyond the very conventional way of taxing and do something new. So property tax, e-commerce taxation, bringing
a very efficient road tax system. To me, these three, if well thought through and proper consultation is secured, could be a solution. But also on the expenditure side, I think government has to do more. And again, here I will agree again with Dr. Japoma. I think we don't seem to look like a country that is struggling. We are struggling, and it's time for us to look at which areas could we make up some savings.
Okay.
So you talk about the free senior high. It's a wonderful idea, but it is time to look at big ministers. You have corporate directors. So imagine asking somebody who is an oil giant director that their son should go to school for free. Is that government business? It is time for us to do means testing, allow those who can afford to contribute their quota in order to bridge even the inequality gap, because that's the stance. You're rather promoting inequality. I'm sure people might talk about fairness, but the fair way is to make sure that the rich who are able to pay are allowed to pay more. Nursing and teacher training allowance is one area to look at. Move all these guys to the student loan scheme, because they are pursuing tertiary-based courses. So putting them into the student loan scheme will again free this fiscal space. I believe once we look at both the expenditure and the revenue side, it is not too late. And to me, IMF is not a solution. It is for a short term. By the long term, Ghana will need a more sustainable domestic revenue strategy.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Alexander Pabin. The big issue, we'll take a break. When we return, we'll delve into other issues. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the big issue on City TV and also City 97.3 FM, discussing the budget for the past hour and a half. We'll be moving on to the second part of the conversation, but we'll hear from Honorable Ricketts Hagan on a couple of points on that before we talk about the Honorable Adwoa Safo and what her fate will be, because we've also been joined by a very senior member of her party from her constituency, Paul Ademopoku. Good morning. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
You are good. Yeah. Just give me 5 minutes with Honorable Ricketts Hagan to wrap up on the budget review, and then we'll discuss a colleague of his whose fate hangs in the balance. Honorable Ricketts, you said you wanted to make a few quick points.
I just wanted to sort of make some clarification, but I'm not going to make it long, but probably need to meet up with Doc Patrick.
Assuming.
And look at a few things. I mean, I think it's about time, and I've been there before as a deputy finance minister. It's about time that probably we get the interest of the academics to look at the numbers that are churned out in the budget, and not take them as, that is holy. If you go through the numbers, sometimes it's not the issue of the methodology. It's the issue of the numbers themselves that are being used. I mean, I agree with him. He was talking about, this price levels impacting GDP. Of course. I mean, and I told you that it's already been factors, because your real GDP, when we say your real GDP, we are talking about, in mathematical terms, your nominal GDP divided by your GDP deflator. I mean, what is a GDP deflator? It's a price deflator, which is a measure of inflation. So inflation has already been taken into account. So it basically tells you that every change that you get in your GDP relies on some changes that you get in your price level. The numbers I'm challenging here is that you can't tell me that you have projected that your GDP at the end of the year will be 502 billion. Then you present in page 86, table 14, you then say that you have revised the same GDP, which means that you got your forecast wrong. And now you think it's 3.7. Then you come here and tell us that your provisional outturn, your outturn means that this is what you have achieved. Your provisional outturn, and this is at the middle of the year, so you think that that's your provisional outturn for the 6 months. If really your provisional outturn is 502 billion, then why are you revising your GDP? That's the question I want to ask. If your projection, you say you end at 502 at the end of the year, these numbers at this stage are all estimate. So if by your estimation at the middle of the year, You say your provisional outturn here on page 81, line 10, is 502 billion. Why are you revising your GDP? Yes, there may be this price change, but it's already been factored in. So so I would like to have an opportunity to meet up with Doc.
Okay.
So we sit down. I mean, before I get into politics, this is what I used to do for a living.
Okay.
You know, as an investment banker. So I've been doing these calculations all my life. I could probably wake up in my sleep and put them together. The other thing is to do with the same argument that Sikama, Honorable Doctor, was saying about, this exchange rate losses issue. It is the same thing they used in calculating the interest payment. You know, they moved the interest payment, again, adjusted from 37.5 billion to the 41 billion. It's the same argument. Nothing has changed. The interest payment they told us at the beginning of the year in the budget is 37.5 billion in cedi terms. That's interest both domestic and external. Okay, when you look at the external component, as I said, external component is dollar. So we must always look at that because that's where the mess happens. When you look at the external issue, the external bid, it's 1.4 billion. That's part of the 35 billion cedis. It's 1.4 billion. It is not domestic debt that has changed to give us the 43. It is the 1.4 billion at the exchange rate of 6, which then was 8 billion. That has changed with the exchange rate of 8 to give us 11 billion. When you add 11 billion to your 35, you get the 41. So how will the argument be different from the other one? So these are the 2 points that there are so many things that he said that I think we'll
time will not allow us. But let me come in then now. Thank you very much, Honorable Ricky Tegan, and talk about what happened on Thursday. You were in Parliament when the Speaker deferred his ruling on Domko Abenya MP Sarah Joa Safo, who had been cited for absenteeism. He had delivered this, and according to them, she had been out of the country for a mandatory 15 days without permission. According to the reports, the majority wants the seat declared, and the majority is her party, while the minority also jumped to her defense. But it looks like it is the Speaker who will decide. But also in the course of the week, the President revoked her appointment as Minister of Gender. That was a role that was already being carried out, and people were asking why it took him so long. And some also feel that it portends what is about to happen. But I want to begin this conversation from her constituency, and Paula Dempoku as MPP Vice Chair of the constituency Domko Abenya.
Yeah, that's correct.
Have you been feeling lonely, constituency of Domko Abenya?
Yes, I mean, generally, when you have an MP, the expectation of the constituents are a lot, right? But when the MP is absent, then that functionality of the MP then behoves on the constituency executive. But there is a limit because the constituency executive more or less are managers of the party in the constituency and not the managers of government in the constituency. That role befalls on the MC. Yeah. I mean, in collaboration with the MP, then at least the development agenda, the lack of opportunities in the constituency, the two of them together can push it, lobby and stuff like that. But when your MP is absent, then it's a challenge. It's a challenge, and the question that a lot will ask is, her absenteeism, is it in the interest of the nation? Is it in the interest of the constituency? So the expectation is that an action needs to be taken so that the interest of the constituency and the nation becomes the most important, as opposed to the interest of individuals, those for political gains or this and supporting that. Okay, yeah, she's absent, so what? Let her continue to be there. Or those who are saying, oh, she's absent, she must be kicked out. At the end of the day, if you say we are a nation of a nation governed by rule of law, what does the law say as far as absenteeism for almost a year is concerned.
We'll get to that, but let me ask you this though. Has she been communicating with the constituency?
As far as I know, the answer is no. As far as I know.
Since she left?
Yeah.
There hasn't been any form of communication between the executive level and the MP?
No. I can only speak to the past, let's say, 3 months, when I became a constituency
vice chair. First chair.
Yeah, first chair. Yeah. Yeah. I can that period.
Within that space, you haven't spoken.
Yes.
There hasn't been any level of communication.
Precisely. But prior to that, I cannot.
She seems. She's always been a pretty popular MP in the community. If you look at her numbers, what have the constituents been telling you? The party, your party members, for instance, been telling you? What are they? Because the executive take might be different from the numbers on the ground.
Yeah. Well, I mean, majority
How
of
do they feel?
Yeah, majority of the constituents basically feel disappointed that MP who was we had a fierce contest in the primaries, and people repose their trust in you, and your business is to help champion the development of the constituency, and for all this period, nothing is happening, and you cannot be heard of. I mean, of course, it becomes a challenge for a lot of the constituents. I'm not even talking about the core supporters of MPP or NDC, but the floating voters, the ordinary Ghanaian, whose interest is only to see that mine roads are constructed, issues that
I'm lobbied for.
Yes, it's not being done. It's a challenge for them. It's a huge challenge for them. And of course, the constituency executives, there is a limit as to what we can do. You know, as to what we can do. We can only carry out the concerns of the majority of the people in the constituency and say, look, this is a challenge for them. This is making the government unpopular. This is affecting issues that pertains or that is dear to the heart of the constituency. So that we have done.
Okay.
Yeah. But as to get her for her to declare the seat vacant, that is not within the authority of the constituency. Yeah.
But did you? Has your opinion been sought on the matter? Just asking.
Oh, of course. I mean, we from time to time we are consulted on as to what is the feedback, how are people feeling, and stuff like that. We do our part. Those that we can reach out to lobby for development and also work in collaboration with the MC, trying to close the gap that has been created by her absence. Yeah.
Interesting. Let me get on Zoom and talk to Dr. John Osai Kwapong. He's a Democracy and Development Fellow with the CDD. Dr. Osai Kwapong, morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Always a pleasure. How's work in the US?
So far, so good.
It's been a busy week for you. You've been analyzing Afrobarometers, teaching,
left,
doing everything,
right,
even everywhere.
Yes, different platforms, answering all kinds of questions.
But this comes to the fore then, this matter of the Member of Parliament for Dom Kwabena. It's been hanging for a while, and it looks like we are nowhere near certainty because nobody wants to take, one would say, the final action. Everybody seems to want to deflect, so to say.
Right. Yes, and I honestly thought that, I think it was this Thursday that I thought some sort of finality would be brought to this issue that has been dragging for almost a year, I think for roughly about a year now. So, because it raises quite a number of questions. There's the constitutional question that clearly specifies what happens to an MP's seat when they are absent from parliamentary sittings for more than 15 sittings without approval or a reasonable explanation, to paraphrase. But constitutional questions don't answer themselves in terms of if there has been an infraction, then that clause has to be activated. Then the question then becomes, what is the administrative process for activating that constitutional question? Is it referring the matter to the Privileges Committee for them to invite a certain MP, and if they don't get answers, they prepare their report, send it to the House for debate, and then a ruling on it by the Speaker? I don't remember who it was, but I think maybe about 2 weeks ago, one of the MPs, I think, said it is up to the Clerk of Parliament to notify the Electoral Commission that a seat has become vacant because an MP has been absent for more than 15 sittings. So I think the constitutional question is very clear. I mean, 15 sittings is 15 sittings. If the attendance record is religiously signed in and all of that, it is very easy to determine whether an MP has missed more than 15 sittings. That's one. It is also very easy to verify from the Speaker's office whether that MP who has been missing for more than 15 sittings did in fact seek the permission of the Speaker, and the Speaker responded in writing or not. And if that permission was not sought, has that absentee MP found a way to provide a reasonable explanation as to why he or she is missing? So for me, the constitutional question is very clear. I think where there seemed to be some lack of clarity in terms of the process is the administrative question of how does the answer to the constitutional question of, yes, an MP has been missing for more than 15, etc., how do we activate it and get to the point of what the consequences are? For me, there's also a political dimension to it. And that political dimension is the issue of representation of your constituents, right? I'm sure there's a reason why the framers of the Constitution put in a number of excused absences that a member of Parliament could have, because there's a political representation question. Issues come before the House, and I'm sure the framers wanted to make sure that every Ghanaian in every constituency was duly represented when matters were being deliberated, because policies, legislations, programs would have an effect on everybody, whether your MP was present or not. So that on the parliamentary side of this issue, those are the things that I think we have to really address, because you hope that it doesn't happen again. But I think how we answer this question and deal with this particular would set a precedent for how we address this broader question of the constitutional issue, its administrative processes, and the political implications of that.
Some have also found it interesting, the positions of the majority, which is her party, and the minority on this matter, and the reasons that have been adduced. And then there are those who have also sat back and said, it looks like it's the political numbers game, because Adjoa's seat not being declared vacant presents a bit of a problem for the majority in Parliament and serves the interest of the minority. It's being declared vacant does not serve their interest. So there's a bit of a game that has been played there, that is being played in that space as well. And then secondly, also your thoughts on, you mentioned the law. Is the law that clear on declaring a seat vacant and its impact on the MP,
So let me quickly take the second question. I think, in my opinion, I strongly believe that the law is very clear. You miss 15 sittings without an excuse in writing from the Speaker, or inability to provide a reasonable explanation as to why you've been absent for more than 15 sittings. I think that's very clear. We can easily count the number of sittings at any given time. We can look at the attendance record and determine that, John, you've been missing for 15 sittings. then you can probe the parliamentary record to say, oh yes, MPA or MPB, yes, they did seek permission from the speaker. The speaker did provide a written approval to say, yes, you are excused. If that is absent, then we can also find out then, have they provided a quote unquote an official reasonable explanation to whoever it has to go to in Parliament for that. So for me, I think that's very clear. As I said in my earlier submission, perhaps what we are not unclear about is administratively then how does that work and how do you ultimately declare the seat vacant and notifying the EC that this particular seat is vacant and then let the EC take it from there. The politics is also very interesting that on this, you tend to see members of her own party. And my speculation is that perhaps because of how closely divided Parliament is and how that close division has serious consequences for some of the major legislations that the ruling government has wanted to pass through. So you think about the delay, for example, in passing the e-levy. Like you yourself said, it became a numbers game. So I'm sure part of that was your long absence is becoming frustrating for getting certain key government business through because that one vote is really critical. If they had a 10, 12, 14 seat majority, I don't think it would feel that frustrating and upsetting like the way it is now. In terms of the position of the minority MPs, I'm not entirely sure what their political interest is in this seat not being declared vacant. They may have other, because from what I've read in some of the media stories, she's dealing with some personal issues. So I can understand the compassion side of that. But I'm not sure what the political interest would be of the minority in this seat not being declared vacant. It's an MPP stronghold. If it's declared vacant, let's say the trend remains, it's an MPP stronghold. If it's declared vacant, chances are an MPP person will pick up the seat. I don't know. I mean, if there was a clear shot of the NDC picking up the seat, I'm wondering if the political interest would be different. I don't know if they don't want this to be a gauge of, oh, you think we are unpopular, but in a by-election, we've still been able to hold that seat. It's just interesting to watch how the two parties are dealing with this. But I think, and it's not as though, unless, of course, there are NDC MPs, which I don't think there is, in a similar situation. And therefore, you can say, well, if we push hard on this MP, we have some of our own who are falling short of this infraction. And therefore, if we protect one, then we protect everyone. It's quite a confusing political picture to watch in terms of how the NDC and the MPP are dealing with this.
Interesting. Let me come to somebody who works in Parliament. And what is your position with that of the minority, or you hold your own position? Ajosafu should not be removed.
Well, I'm the ranking of the Privileges Committee.
It's good you are here. What happened?
We put a report together in the end.
Well, why is it not clear that the sitting MP has missed 15 days without permission? What's the difficulty?
Well, without not going too much about the deliberations at the several committee meetings, what's the name? His name, the gentleman just spoke.
You mean Dr. Sekwapan?
Oh, that's Dr. Sekwapan, yes. Made an interesting point. And I feel very sorry for the constituent of Honorable Ajosafu. I mean, I don't think anybody gets elected, to the privileged position of being, serving the good people of Dominico Abenya, and then decide that, or to keep cool out in that matter, and decide that they are not going to show up in Parliament, and then if they are fed up, obviously you just have to come and say you don't want to do the job anymore. So it's a very, very weird situation. But let's look at it from a constitutional standpoint, not with emotions. All right. The Speaker referred the matter of 3 honorable gentlemen and a lady to us. But the matter on the discussion, I will want to stick to Honorable Joseph.
Yes,
there are
certainly.
other complications, the other ones. But the case of Honorable Joseph, the reference to us was based on Article 97(1)(c), which basically says, as the doc rightly said, that if you don't attend Parliament for 15 days in a sitting, not 15 continuous days. This is something most of us didn't know until we started doing that. It's not actually a continuous. Because you see, maybe somebody comes to Parliament for 5-6 days and maybe don't come for 2 days and make sure they come so that they beat the 15 days. But actually, when you have 15 days in a sitting, the law catches up with you. So it is clear that if you don't come in 15 days, the 97(1)(c) says that you lose your seat. So you will probably say that yes, that's a clear cut. That's a constitutional imperative. You don't show up. So in this case, all the 3 people referred to us just shouldn't show up in Parliament again. But the same constitution and the same article, 97(1)(c), also says, and that's where the challenge is, also says that you should be heard before that decision. So it doesn't then become automatic. If you should be heard, and the hearing is done by the privileges upon reference or upon referral by Right Honorable Speaker. So basically, when the hearing and everything is done, a decision is made by the privileges committee, our committee, as to whether the reasons presented to us is legitimate or not, or reasonable in this case, not legitimate, reasonable. Now, the reasonability of it or the lack of it is what we will recommend to the plenary, to the Speaker. Now, a seat, supposing today I draft a press conference and I go and stand out of your studio and say that I no longer want to be an MP for Cape Coast South and all that, and therefore I will not show up in Parliament again. You would think that my seat, I automatically vacate my seat. But somebody will have to do the invocation of your seat being vacant. So they can't just say that Kwekuri Kitegan said his seat is vacant. And the only person who can declare a seat vacant in Parliament is the Right Honourable Speaker, not the Privileges Committee. Okay. And every committee in Parliament is the Speaker's committee. And every work that is referred by Right Honourable Speaker to the committee should also come back to him when the job is done. So my chairman, who you referred to, who went out, First Deputy Speaker, who is the chairman and I'm the rank, who went out to say that it's automatic and we should inform EC and all that. It is not. Because you have to take 97(1)(c) with 1125.
What does 1125 say?
1125 says that when the seat is declared vacant, the clerk of Parliament should inform the EC within 7 days. And within 21 days or so, the by-election should happen. This is where the invocation happens. So now, until the seat is declared vacant, we, the Privileges Committee, have no authority in informing the Clerk of Parliament to go to. The Clerk of Parliament's portion is administrative, as he rightly said. But there has to be an invocation of that to take place. I as a ranking or chairman, cannot call the Clerk of Parliament and say, go and inform EC that Honorable Joseph's seat is being declared vacant. So it is for that reason that we are saying that, look, we don't have the authority to make that decision or to make that determination, but we are to make a decision that is to be referred to the Right Honourable Speaker. In the case of Honourable Joseph, we did not find her On the case of the other two, we found them and we spoke with them, and there are issues there.
You did not find her?
We didn't. All the measures we took to reach her was to no avail.
As in, she did not present herself.
She did not present herself, so we didn't find her.
Is that not a presumption? Is that not reasonable grounds? Sorry, to assume that she doesn't want to talk to you?
That's a speculation. You can't.
But she's available. Assume. She's available on other platforms. You can see her.
Even that itself is quite challenging. The only credible, what is it called, online or whatever that I will stand, is just the one interview done by Joy FM. The rest are pure speculation. You could see her on TikTok. Do you know what day that was made? No. Is it an old tape or a new one? Okay. You could find something on his wall, Facebook wall.
Instagram.
You know how somebody can set up a Facebook page and put that thing there. So those ones are not credible. As Parliament, we cannot stand on those. The interview, yes. Joy FM said they granted the interview. So what we did was to actually contact Joy FM and say, look, we've been trying to find this lady that you had the opportunity to interview. How did you get her? And Joy FM said, a PA of hers calls so and so with this number. That's what we used. So we charged the clerk of the committee that reached this gentleman who's been communicating with Honorable Adjosafo, because we have dealt with other PAs. Don't forget, she's a member of the executive.
Yes.
Serves as a minister for gender and social protection. And she sits at another arm of government, which is the legislature. And then, of course, she has a constituency where probably there are officers there, like the executives or her own personal. I don't know if she has her own personal office, but she probably has somebody who is a right-hand man or a woman.
Certainly.
Okay. So we exhausted all that, but we work within the constraint of the law. So we are doing this. The referral was in conjunction with our own standing orders, which is 16.1, which basically says the same about. But at the same time, 2053 of our standing orders also says that if all fails in trying to reach someone, publish that you are looking for that person.
Did you?
Which is what we did. There was publication in there. And then these days, you know that graphic and all those people, they have online and all that. Because the Constitution does not provide for somebody being out of jurisdiction and you should reach. But fortunately, technology has helped us to be able to do that. So the time given, everything was exhausted. And she did not make an appearance. I don't even want to say, though you look at it on the surface. This is pure matter of law and a very important issue. So you cannot just speculate even that she had respected the committee. Because you did not reach her for her to tell you, I will come, and didn't come. Okay. Or you did not reach her for her to say, I won't come, and you say you've been disrespected. This is a case we could not reach the lady. Look, had it not been the Joy...
Including the PA? The PA
yes,
couldn't reach her?
The PA, the same Joy...
Couldn't reach her?
PA. Now, his channels of reaching her was blocked, according to him.
Interesting.
That's very interesting. It's a very weird case. And it needs to be felt. Had it not been, at the committee meeting, I actually, as ranking, declared her at the committee as missing.
Why did you not? Could you have gone out and said she's missing?
Well, I stopped short of doing that when she appeared on Joy FM.
But post that she was still not available to you.
Yes. So, this is a minister of state. Okay? In a way, it's a security threat.
Certainly.
Okay? So if we can, the Republic of Ghana cannot find its minister, and the executive who appointed her and is their colleague is silent on it, not saying anything. That look, we have heard from Honorable Adjosafo, the president has heard from Honorable Adjosafo. She's not well. She's had this issue or she's died. So we are aware of the situation. That is why we have put a minister there to be a caretaker minister because we expect her back. Or we are planning to do maybe some reshuffle when we get there. We don't have a problem with that. But they were completely silent on it while we were looking for her, another arm of government. If they did have some information, they could have told Parliament that, look, you are looking for this lady, but actually we have given her leave for whatever period. And that's why she's not here. Now you, Parliament, can do your work, whatever your processes are, because there are two, what is it called?
Separate arms.
Separate arms. Nothing at all. It's as if the executive was waiting for Parliament to take a decision on her before they act. Now, decision time came. Show time on Thursday. Then, after the speaker, now, the interesting thing is, the people who clearly, as you have said, wanted her out, which is her own side, where the chairman of the committee has decided that he was going to go by motion of the report, which is normally the case, because the report comes and then there's a debate, so you come in motion. Came by motion after they laid the report. Then on the day that you have put a motion and we're going to debate where we have some concerns and we're going to raise them, the leader of the House, Honorable Chairman Sabuso, says, we are withdrawing the motion and come by statement. Just like the budget was done. If you come by statement, then you are informing us. You are not demanding anything from us.
Okay.
No decision or no money. In this case, there's no money involved, just decision. And that is where the issue came. That you have government business that comes to Parliament. It's done by the majority. Every motion. It's not we who bring the motion. Every committee, with the exception of subsidiary legislation and public accounts, and I think there's a third one, where the minority is the chair. Those are the only committees that the minority will bring the report through the chairman. But for my committee, the chairman of the committee is Honorable Oseusu, and I am the ranking. So after everything, he is the report. He owns the report, and he presented it. We say, look, we have to debate this. He says no. He has already gone to the public to say that Honorable Ajosafu's seat has been declared vacant and he's, what is it called, clerk's office used to. So why did you come by motion? It means that there's a clear either lack of understanding or they themselves were confused on what to do. So that is what the whole, hula balloon was on Thursday. So we are saying that, okay, now you brought a motion, let's debate. He said, no, we want to make it a statement because we are only informed. We are just to inform. Privileges Committee, has already made the decision. And we said no. So after the Right Honorable Speaker had visited the old lady, as he put it, he came back and said, look, this decision is of such an enormity of a decision that it's not one that is to be taken lightly or when temperatures are high. We are rising today. We want to rise at 1 o'clock. It's gone past that. Let's cool heads prevail. Let's go and look after this thing again. When we come back, we will make a decision. Then what happens in the evening of that day? His Excellency the President now has gathered some strength somewhere to sack the lady from office. I would expect this is not a reshuffle situation. It's an absenteeism situation, unless there is something else about performance or something that we don't know. But if you are not president, how can you even perform? So the president should have told us the reason why Honorable Ajosafu is now being sacked after having allowed her all this period. That maybe we give her a written permission or a verbal, whatever it is. But after that, verbal or written has expired, all attempt to reach her has failed. And for that reason, I cannot keep the Ministry of Gender, which is a very, very critical ministry that deals with poverty and age issues in this country, vacant. I cannot also decline the people of Ghana. Therefore, if you, Parliament, you have failed in making a decision, I think I have come to the end of the road on this lady, and therefore I have sacked her. Then the people of Domi Kwabenya will be looking at Parliament, where the Parliament will also relieve them of their beleaguered MP and give them an opportunity to bring a new one or whatever it is. You can look into this and look at, of course, there's politics in everything.
Certainly.
We work in anonymous. Okay, we have been taking...
But should that even matter in this case?
It shouldn't matter. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. That
15 days, yes or no?
Yeah, but I say it's not that simple, because that article is hooked to another article of 112. Okay, so
which is the person must be heard. But you stretched that to its very patient limit.
Listen, we have to be firm, but also be fair. Look.
Wow.
Yes, we are dealing with. There was speculation that this lady was suffering through childbirth or whatever. Again, that was a speculation. There were other things that it was her personally suffering.
You can't work with the speculation and public.
So
you need definite information.
And then there was the third one, which was not a speculation, which she herself came on the television and said, it's the issue to do with my child. Whether the child is alive or dead or whatever, we don't know. Okay, so that's the only firm.
But could she not have written that to the speaker who has to make the decision?
Well,
child, because she had been communicating with Parliament up until a point when it stopped. So if it's the matter of her child, why did she not simply write to the speaker?
Okay, the same question. Why did she not write to the president?
No, but it sounds like I don't know. We can take it. Your committee
we have started something.
Shifting responsibility to the presidency.
No. We're not shifting responsibility. We're doing our job. He was the one waiting for us, and when we did not arrive at the decision the same day,
he took a decision. Interesting. Let me hear.
So we were just doing what we were supposed to do. But the politics side of it, I mean, it's neither here nor there. But the numbers, I mean, we have lost one person who is not completely out, still fighting his legal battles and all that. So the numbers obviously matters. But for me, it is the fairness and also the natural justice embedded in 97(1)(c), which says that if you have not been heard, the law of
justice cannot be passed.
Justice cannot be
let me hear from a colleague member of Parliament of yours. Then I'll come to Mr. Dempoku, who has a lot of notes. The Honorable Katie Amon, this member of Parliament for Adasiasoko. Katie, morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for your time this morning. And I just want to hear your thoughts quickly on what happened in Parliament on Thursday. The Privileges Committee presents a report to Parliament. Then the Speaker of Parliament defers his ruling on Dom Kwabenya MP Sarah Adjoa-Safo. One would have thought this was a straightforward issue. You've been absent for 15 days. Why has there been such a delay in reaching a conclusion on this matter?
Yes, hi. Hello and good morning to you. Yes, I'm not sure who was there, who the reporter was, but I made a submission. I made my point when the speaker asked for contributions. I made a point. And my point was essentially this, that the 97(1)(c) doesn't look as clear as it is. It seems to be fairly complicated. It would seem to me that it wasn't a matter for the plenary to discuss. It would appear that the report of the committee is owned by the committee itself. So ultimately, it is for the committee of the Privileges Committee to make the pronouncement and then hand it over to the Speaker. It wasn't a straightforward matter. You say that why have you been sitting in Parliament for all this long? Precisely for the reasons I've indicated. In any event, the committee was required to invite the parties involved to come and explain why a particular decision should not be taken adverse against them or not. Eventually, I think they managed to get two of them. The third one doesn't appear to have made herself available. So it's taking them some time to get the individuals to present their side of the argument. And then, of course, eventually, when the report was prepared, we have been fairly busy in Parliament, but it made sense. But you see, it wasn't straightforward. The minority leader, I think, when the motion was moved, the majority leader thought that it probably wasn't a proper procedure that we adopted, so he sought to arrest it. Minority wasn't entirely excited about the prospect of arresting the motion, so he made his point that he thought we should proceed and get Parliament to make a decision. You know,
Honorable Katie Hammond. Honorable Katie Hammond.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Please go ahead.
Yes, okay. So in the process, honorable minorities that have cited the judgment in the case of Amwat actually was Professor Stephen Kwekwe, who I think filed the motion in court. I think he issued a writ. And the judgment of the Court of Appeal dated December 2008 was cited by the Honorable Minority Leader as a basis to why the decision should be discussed in the plenary. You can have a copy of that decision and then read it. It's even more complicated than we thought. You see, so, you know what? It seems to me that ultimately we will end up in the Supreme Court on this matter. I made a submission to the Speaker that, well, he would have to maybe end this whole process of our having to debate the matter, accede to the request of the majority leader, and he himself should have a good look at this matter and see whether it doesn't lie in his own bosom to decide what the procedure was. He said he was adjourning the Parliament, the sitting for a few seconds to consult Abrewetia, the local palace, to consult the oracle. He came back a few minutes later and then said that yes, he done exactly that, and he had been advised, and he thought it was sensible to accept the advice of the old lady, and it was essentially this. He should step the matter down, again to whatever is cut time, to give it a comprehensive study and find its way forward, because it didn't look like it was straightforward. Look at the sea again. The sea there's no automaticity in the sea. The A and B that you find there, I don't have the Constitution with me, but I looked at it. So as you look at it, the first two, the resignation, the death, and those things, it's automatic. Now the C is when the person has been absent from Parliament for the number of days, 15 days, without reasonable explanation or excuse, to the Parliamentary Committee for Privileges. You know, so. All right. So do they have to report to Parliament? Is it a decision by Parliament? The Amwatson matter was a case in which to those of you who are old enough, you will recall, he was caught up in some issues in America,
yes.
And he had applied for Parliament to grant him indefinite leave. Another argument was that, well, this matter was referred to the Privileges Committee, and the decision of the committee was eventually debated. Accordingly, we should debate these other matters as well. Now, it seems to be, the Amwatson matter seems to be distinguishable. Amwatson's matter was asking for indefinite leave, and it was referred to the privileges, and then the report was debated. This is not exactly the case. It was a question of whether, having stayed beyond the 15-day limit allowed by the Constitution, there was a reasonable explanation. And how is that positive in the context of the seeds that I've indicated. It's a difficulty. We've got to be careful.
I can understand that, but is that all these uncertainties, are they not negated by the fact that there is one clear issue here? She has not asked for an extension of her leave of absence, so far as we are concerned. Does that not settle the matter?
No, it hasn't. Yeah, it hasn't. If it was as clear as that, I won't be spending all this moment trying to explain. It's not as simple at all as you suggested, you contemplated. No, the fact that she's been away for 15 days is not in contention. I mean, the fact that she hasn't sought for extension again is not debatable. The point is this: having satisfied the provision prerequisite, what is the way forward? Who takes the decision? That is the bit that we are struggling with. We understand she's been away for 15 days. She has, indeed, we don't even know whether she has a reasonable explanation or not, because I understand that she hasn't been able to attend to explain part of the issue. So that limp is still there. But beside all of that, the issue is that, okay, so who now takes the further decision to remove her from Parliament? Is it plenary? Is it a committee of privileges? Is it a speaker? Or what? I read the judgment of the Court of Appeal last time, and I was even more baffled by what is being suggested. I think ultimately, as I said, as Supreme Court will have to come to grips with this matter and the result.
Thank you very much, Honorable Katie. I'm a member of Parliament for Adansia Sokwa, for spending some time with me on this matter. Paul.
Yes.
You've heard the politicians, the MPs speak. It does not look like you have a solution.
He still wants. He just wants his MP.
Your thoughts, because they are electing. They are telling us, and I will go back to Dr. John Osain Kwapo in a bit. I'm sure he is also scratching his head right now, because what we thought was a clear-cut matter, according to those who are vested in the matter, it's not as simple as we deem it. In fact, who to declare the seat vacant is even could perhaps become a matter of a Supreme Court interpretation. So you might have to wait for a while.
Yeah, I mean, I understand. I mean, as the saying goes, a politician will always be a politician. I mean, even when the issue is yes or no. I mean, they have a lot of ways of addressing clear-cut issues. Yeah, I understand, but the fact is, I believe that the prime business of every politician is the interest of the nation. Okay, so the question we need to ask ourselves, being absent for almost a year, because I believe, if my memory is right, last year in August,
yes,
I mean, there was a statement when the Honorable Minister for Sanitation, yes, was asked to take up her ministry as a caretaker minister, that she had applied for an extended leave of 1 month or so to take care of some personal matters. Okay, but after that, we've never heard anywhere that whether an extension had been granted to her, whether she's applied for an extension. And basically, yes, we have tried every means. I agree with Honorable that, yes, seeing her on TikTok or whatever, cannot be a means to say that she's alive or she knows what is going on. But again, if I can recall, I believe that when the MPP had a national delegate conference, there was a statement, I mean, from her, that it was a successful conference here and there. Yeah, there was a statement that was going around. But the fact still remains that, look, unless, of course, she's in such a situation that she cannot speak for herself, or she cannot speak for herself, or probably she's been kidnapped by somebody or something like that. Because other than that, the issue right here is that because you are being looked for, that you have been referred to a privileges committee, and if the interest of your constituents, the people who voted for you to become an MP, is at heart, then of course you make every effort to say that yes, the circumstances or the situation in which I find myself, I will not be able to appear, or that you are caring for the people who gave you the mandate to go and represent them. Right. I mean, for the politics aspect, yes. I mean, of course. I mean, here is the case. You can clearly see that the NDC is being more Catholic than the Pope.
But this is Katie Hammond you just heard.
I understand.
He is MPP.
Yeah, I understand. They are being more Catholic than the Pope. Because the question right here that you need to ask, why? Is it because it has been over some period, about 5 terms or 4 terms, a stronghold of MPP? So the likelihood that MPP is going to win the seat and will make their life much more, a bit more comfortable in Parliament. So look, as much as possible, as far as we can use the law and the Constitution, let's double around it and delay as much as possible. But the question is, you are all the MPs are in Parliament to serve the interests of Ghana. The question all of them should ask themselves, what is going on? Is it in the interest of the people of Dominic Abinyan? And to that extent, the interest of Ghana, because he's also an MP. Sorry, a minister who is serving
She's no longer a minister.
No, she was. Who is serving the entire interest of this nation. You understand? So at the end of the day, yes, granted, the executive have been dragging their feet. For what reason, we don't know. Whether they are privy to some information that they felt that, like the politicians always say, in the interest of national security or whatever, so they will not divulge it. But at the end of the day, the executive, they've taken the bull by the horn and say, look, we have there's a revocation of your appointment.
And you expect something as also definite from
Precisely.
Parliament. Okay, hold on for me. Let me talk to Dr. John Osei-Kwapo.
Ask you an interesting question,
Okay.
which has just come to my mind.
Yeah.
I was wondering whether maybe you did or didn't do it, but at party level,
Yeah.
whether you went to the the national executives,
That's for a recall of some kind.
or no, to ask them to find out from the executive, the presidency, if there's a, because the reason I'm saying is that the national chairman and the national secretary actually sit in cabinet. So you can, by extension, their cabinet, to find out what is happening with your MP.
Interesting one. Then
Yeah.
hold on to that one.
Okay.
For me. Let me talk to Dr. John Osei-Kwapo on this matter. Doc, your otherwise simple formula seems to have been thrown out of the window by Katie Hammond and Ricketts Hagan, who are saying we might actually require a Supreme Court interpretation on who actually can declare a seat vacant under this circumstance.
So it looks like the two honorables agree on the point that the MP has been absent for more than 15 sittings. They are not even sure there is an excused absence. So that part, they both agree. The difference here is that Honorable Katie says that we don't know who does the declaration of the seat as vacant. The Honorable in the studio says only the Speaker can do that. And once the Speaker does that, then administratively the Clerk of Parliament then informs the EC. I liked the part of the reasonable part, which the Honorable really delved into by saying, yes, even after it's been clear that the MP is absent, etc., you still have to offer opportunities for a reasonable explanation. So I'm here thinking the committee exhausts all of its, opportunities, avenues to try and offer this MP an opportunity to provide that reasonable explanation. I watched the Joy interview where she alluded to some of the challenges and even said, look, I haven't abandoned my party, I haven't abandoned my constituents, etc., etc. So I was saying to myself, that same explanation and interview granted to multimedia, could that same have been granted to the Privileges Committee? And then based upon that, the committee could have said, okay, we have a reasonable explanation, although it's come a year after, and this is therefore our report to the speaker. And if really it is the speaker's call, at least they would have had the full full picture. So it even makes it a little more bizarre. The reason I hope this doesn't go back to the court to say, by the way, court, also tell us who gets to declare this, is that I think so long as we don't break the law or the constitution, there are some things we should be able to resolve administratively. But I've realized that in our case, we have a penchant for legal resolutions to sometimes what, in my opinion, can be administrative matters that can be settled. I'm not sure there was contention even over whether the speaker is the one who can rule, because I think the members generally sort of agree that, well, if the speaker wants to take some time to reflect and come back, then implicitly it means that it is the speaker's job to declare that seat vacant. But you're right. I just hope that some way, somehow, some resolution will be found to this and a precedent set for future occurrences of these things. But even if you outside of all of the constitutional conversations that we are having, as a matter of politics and governance, it even doesn't look good. I mean, imagine a number of MPs go AWOL, for a year. They have an executive appointment as well, and they are not. You don't know even whether they are continuing to do their work as minister or not. They are not representing their constituents. What happens? Do we just leave the constituency to fate until the MP? I mean, people do have personal challenges. I won't, put a damper on that. But beyond all of that, there are also important issues of, good governance that I will think that sometimes there's also the burden on us, the person serving in the role, to be able to say, on the principle of good governance and representation of the honorable thing for me to do, if these challenges are not going to go away, I can't hold my people in limbo forever. I would even, step aside myself.
Interesting thoughts from Dr. Sai. You wanted to say something before I take a break? Let me just take a quick break.
Yeah, okay.
I'll be back. I'll tell them to take a quick break.
Yeah, ask me a question, and then also something has just jumped up at me.
Okay, so welcome back on the big issue. Just looking to wrap this up. So the chairman of Domkwabenya, the first vice chair of Domkwabenya, Paul Adepoko, I'll give you a minute or two just to share your thoughts, and then I'll move on to my NIA conversation.
Right. Then you give me a minute as well.
You are not getting a minute.
I want you to raise just the last issue on this.
There will be no other issues to raise.
It will eventually come and you call us to come and talk about it.
The Honorable did ask the question whether we've taken this up with the
party.
Yeah, the party at the national level. I mean, of course, we have been communicating our concerns to them with regards to the absence of the MP. And basically, I believe the party by itself cannot record the MP from Parliament. We cannot. This has to be done in conjunction with the executives and in conjunction with the Parliament. But here we are today that Parliament. We are in a quandary. We don't know what to. They are not even sure of what to say. But what my appeal, use this medium to appeal, is that at the end of the day, we should all let the interest of the nation be at our hearts, and also the interest of the constituents. The people who gave the mandate. We should care about their interests, their concerns. so that we can move forward, I mean, as a country, as a party, and also set the precedent. I mean, like what Dr. Osei-Kwapong earlier said. He said that, look, then if this continues, then there's a possibility that tomorrow you have 50 MPs all will absent themselves and they will evade invitation to the Privileges Committee because we are setting a bad precedent.
Yeah.
But when it becomes clear that, yes, if you absent yourself without reasonable explanation and you refuse to be contacted, then, of course, there are sanctions that can apply. Then at least it will also be a check and balance, so that when we vote, people are voted into office as parliamentarians, and we are using the taxpayers' money to pay them. They will also deliver the services or the services that they are supposed to deliver to the nation as a whole. So, I mean, for me, we appeal to Honorable that wherever she is, she should let us know, because the constituency, the party executives, we are eagerly waiting for her to be in our midst to help us move the constituency forward. And if it's something that at the end of the day, the interest is not there, it will also be helpful that she steps aside for somebody else. She sets aside for somebody else to take over, so that we can move Ghana as a nation forward.
Thank you, Paul Ademopoku, MP, First Vice Chair.
Quickly, no, it's a different issue. Not that. I was going to say, from what he said, that I really sympathize with the local Abenya constituency, because they are at the moment not being represented. Whatever project that they have in their constituency, I mean, I know MPs are not
agents of development.
Yeah, but to lobby for all these things are not happening. People are getting up of parliament asking what is the stage of this project and that is not really happening. It seems as if the president has just started doing her work, because I think he was in the constituency
yesterday
to do something. Yeah. That's not how it should be. So I hope that you find a solution to this.
We also hope you in Parliament help in finding a solution.
It's in the hands of the Speaker.
Yeah.
Who we believe is the only one who can declare seat maker.
We'll see about that. Let's talk about, let's spend the last 10 or 15 minutes just catching up on this SIM card registration matter. Now, there's a July 31 deadline for the merging of Ghana cards with SIM cards. And yesterday I was driving through Osu. I saw the MTN office at Osu. Across the street is, I think, either a Vodafone office or an Airtel Tigo office. Queues to last for days. If you go to the NIA centers as well, queues to last for days. Chaos everywhere, all in a bid to beat this deadline. And there are those who have said, like, it doesn't make sense that there's even a deadline for this, and that there should be an extension. The Minister for Communications, the Honorable Eslo Ekufu, has said there will not be. So Monday gets ready to be deactivated. I've added one more person to this conversation, Apia Kusi Adumaku. He's West Africa Regional Director for CATS International. Apia Kusi Adumaku, morning.
Hi, good morning, sir, and your viewers of CTTV.
Thank you very much for joining us this morning on this matter. So it's been a few days of initially subtle lobbying, but now it's just downright aggressive lobbying to get the communications minister to extend the deadline based on some sound argument, if you ask me. The NIA, for instance, have said that they were not built to deal with these kind of deadlines. They are not a deadline operation, but the policies of other agencies seem to always give them problems. The Communications Authority also saying that, look, we are trying to fix cyber crime and whatnot in this country. We need this done, and we've given Ghanaians enough time. And so there will not be an extension. And so we have queues in a lot of places. We've been informed by some telcos that they will be operating this weekend. As whether they'll be operating 24 hours, we don't know. But they'll be operating today and tomorrow so that they can help as many people as they can to register. Did we need to even get here, where we are asking for an extension?
Yes, okay. I think the issue of extension with regards to the deadline is something that is required in the light of the constraints that subscribers have been going through in trying to register. The thing is that to be able to register your SIM card, it's not a question of presenting your body to the teleco's registration desk to register. You need to be able to meet a condition precedent. That is the NIA card. And NIA has its own operational plan. And they have been working hard to meet the deadline set by government, but then it appears that they are unable to meet. And as of now, close to 1 million people have had their card printed, but they have not been able to get them. There are some people who have got their cards, but there are some errors on their card, and until those errors are fixed, they can't even register. Yesterday, somebody said that when he got to NI office in Accra, he was told to go and do some gazette of her name, and that gazette would come out in 6 weeks' time, meaning all these people will not be able to get their cards, their SIM card registered by the stroke of midnight tomorrow. And so when you aggregate all these things together, I think it makes sense for government, especially, acting through the Ministry of Communications and Digitalization, to extend the deadline with some conditions and some limitations with regards to SIM cards that have not been registered. We know how human beings will operate. As you extend the deadline, a lot of people are going to go back and wait again till the last day. And so the condition that CAT as an organization, we are asking the minister and the ministry to do is that if you have a SIM card which is not registered, so we're asking the ministry to actually extend the registration deadline to the end of the year. However, by the end of August this year, if you've not been able to register, then the conditions and the limitations starts to play in. One of them is that if you have not registered, from 1st of September, you can only send or receive 100 Ghana cedis. That's our suggestion to the ministry. And then there's also a limit of data you can browse, let's say 100 megabytes a day, or you can only talk for 10 minutes in a day. And then October 1st, if you have not registered again, then you lose your Momo. And then November, if you're not registered, you lose your voice. And then December, if you have not registered, then you lose your data. And then by January, automatically, if you have not registered, then they can take you off from the SIM network. These are our recommendations to the minister. We are told that the minister is going to address the press tomorrow at midday, and we are very hopeful that the ministry would come up with some reprieve for those who have not been able to register their SIM card.
Okay, let me hear Dr. Osai-Kwapong, your thoughts on this matter. Well, okay, we seem to have lost Dr. Osai-Kwapong. Apia, I'll come back to you in a bit. You are in Parliament again, Honorable Ricketts Hagan. What have you been telling the communications minister? She's your colleague in Parliament.
Yeah.
What have your constituents been telling you to tell her?
The funny thing about this government is they make everything look too complicated. I tried to look at this and I said, why this complication? I mean, okay, you want Ghana card to be linked to SIM card. Maybe great idea. Yeah. Security-wise and everything. You know, I'm of the belief that eventually we should have a national card that can be used for pretty much everything, which will carry your biometric data as well, that you don't have to go somewhere else and again have to do some biometric, stuff. But the problem is the way it's done. Look, the population in this country who are likely to need this. NCA have given us this figure. I hear it's about 42 billion. So let's just use absolute figure. I like using numbers to do things. 40 billion people. 40 million people. Sorry, million, yes. Because our population is 30 million. It can't be 40 billion. 30 million and 40 million people are supposed to register.
Yes.
Okay? So these are the people that you expect them to obviously link their cards to their SIM. Now you go to the other end. Who is the other stakeholder here? The other stakeholder is the NIA. Yeah. They are producing this card that will enable you port it or whatever to that. Now, how many cards have they issued or registered? They are saying we've done 16 million. Okay? And we have actually issued about 15 million. So on the other side, with all the telcos, because some have Vodafone, some have this, some have 2 phones and all that, but this is what NCA is saying. So you look at it and say, okay, you expect to see 15 million, or let's say the 20 million, some of them, you expect to see 30 million. Let's take it on average that each person maybe has 2 phones on the average. So 15 million people who have received their card, according to NIA, should be able to go and register their 2 phones on the average. Some may have more. So you expect 30 million to have registered at this stage. If the number says 20 million, then it means there are some 10 million people or 10 million phones who belongs to these people have not been linked to their. Okay, so that's one thing. So what do we do to catch up on all these? These guys are saying, the NIA, they say they have 200 and something centers around the country. Okay, are those centers enough? Probably not. Again, how are they doing it? When you come in, then they register you. Couldn't they have gone? Everybody has a name, okay, and everybody has a surname, okay. Couldn't they have done this in alphabetical order, for instance, that for this period we are registering people with surname A. For this period, registering people with surname B, so that everybody A to Z knows they will be taken care of in terms of their card. Because without your card, you cannot do your SIM link. So if we have not exhausted the issuance of Ghana card, the exercise of SIM linking cannot be completed. Okay, so if that has been done, it's okay. What I publish in the newspapers or say on the radio for those who can't read, that we'll be doing A. So wherever you are, whichever district these machines are, you can go around if your surname is Ansa or Edu. Okay, if you go there and your surname is something else, Bano or whatever, it's not your day. Therefore, you will not go and increase a queue at the place. You will only be served if at that center there's nobody there called A on the day you go there. So there's no restriction that if you are not A, you can't go there. But when you go there, you will only be served if there's nobody there which is A looking for a service. Then you can be served to help the process. So all these things are not done. You have queues on the NIA side, you have queues on the telco side, people doing things and say they haven't received. You have cards that are sitting there that probably they have issued, but they have not been picked up. So if you have gone by these names, so A cards are already here, we have this, you can even segregate it and say, we have 10,000 A cards that have not been collected, they have this, they have that. If there's no card for J, and then you go there and say you haven't received your card, but your surname is J, then they're probably going to tell you that, look, you don't have a card here. You either haven't registered. When you walk in there are people doing double registration because they went there to register. For about a year now, they say they haven't received their card. So they think that their data has not been captured, and therefore they think the quick way to do it is to go and register again. So these people are clocking the system. Now, and then come to the minister side. And I think, again, this same thing. These guys don't see the big picture. This is a government looking for revenue. E-levy being one of them. People have money on their phones that if you say tomorrow you are going to terminate or deactivate the line, either they lose the money or today all monies will be withdrawn. It becomes counterproductive to the idea of creating a cashless society. Because presumably, You have 20 million phones out there, according to that, have not yet been linked with their Ghana card to that. So if you terminate those ones, you have basically lost 20 million people who will generate money through the telcos and for the telcos to pay you the taxes. So if you've taken 20 million people or 20 million phones, not people, out of the system by this exercise of, I don't know whether it is arrogance or trying to say that we are tough or trying to say that that's it. If you give people 1 year, they will still do the same. Because you haven't put systems in place that will deter people from continuing not to register. I mean, proposals given there of doing certain things might be another option, though I don't subscribe to that. But there may be other interventions that you can do that will make the exercise go smoothly and does not require all these things. Look, the money, and let me talk about me. I'm looking at the money.
Just a minute on the money.
On the money side of things. So we are talking about people who might make a run. This is not a bank. They may make a run on their phones by going to get the money. Then you have people who trade with their phones. So you are going to basically, you want to create individual small businesses and all that. These small businesses are now on this technology. If their phones don't work, they are out of business. So whatever revenue you are looking for.
You see a big problem there. Thank you very much.
I always see the big problem.
Okay, so I think it's
which is underestimated.
Thank you so much for spending this Saturday with us. We know you have a busy schedule, but you've made time for us. Thank you as well to my good friend Pia Kusi Adomako, who is the West Africa Director at CATS International, Dr. John Osain Kwapon, Democracy and Development Fellow, CDD Ghana. My name is Godfrey Akuto Boafo. Have a good weekend.